The gift you can't take credit for. There's a moment every leader knows too well. You spend hours refining an idea, rallying a team, and shaping something meaningful. Then, when the moment comes for recognition, someone else steps into the spotlight. They accept the applause, and you're left holding the silence. It stings because we all crave acknowledgement. Deep down, we want our effort to count, our contribution to matter. But here's the truth that dismantles both pride and pain. In the greatest work ever accomplished, the redemption of humanity, none of us can take credit. Ephesians 2:8-9 reminds us, "For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." This isn't just a theological statement. It's a worldview that redefines how we lead, love, and live. The unseen foundation beneath everything. Let's pull the lens back for a moment. On a foundational level, you and I wouldn't exist without grace. We didn't design our lungs, spin the planets, or set fire to the sun. The systems that sustain us, oxygen, gravity, consciousness, and creativity, are all borrowed. Every breath we take is unearned mercy. That means before we even start talking about leadership or success, we have to recognize that life itself began as a gift. Grace isn't just about salvation, it's about existence. And if the very ground beneath our feet is grace, then striving to prove our worth is like a tree bragging that it made its own roots. We didn't. We don't. We can't. Grace doesn't flatter our ego. It humbles it. It teaches us that everything we build, whether in business or in life, rests on a foundation we did not lay. The myth of self-made. The business world loves the myth of the self-made success story. The founder who started in a garage and conquered the world. The executive who climbed from the mailroom to the boardroom. Those stories inspire, but they also deceive if we miss the deeper truth. No one is truly self-made. We are all grace-made. The networks, mentors, timing, and even the breath that fuels our determination, none of it is purely ours. This doesn't diminish effort. It dignifies it. It means our work is a partnership, not performance. Our excellence becomes stewardship, not self-exaltation. Before you celebrate your next win, pause and ask, what unseen hands made this possible? Maybe it was the teammate who stayed late, the parent who sacrificed quietly, or the God who kept you standing when everything was collapsing. Gratitude shifts our posture. It transforms ambition from hunger for validation into hunger for impact. When striving turns into stealing. There's a subtle form of theft that happens every day in boardrooms and living rooms alike when we try to take credit for what belongs to God. Not intentionally, but in spirit. It happens when we start to believe our worth is tied to our work, when we measure our identity by productivity, titles, or applause. Paul wrote from a Roman prison, yet he spoke as a free man because he understood something we often forget. Achievement is not the source of value. Grace is. The moment we take credit for what only grace could do, we shift from co-laborers to counterfeiters. Grace says, you're already accepted. Performance whispers, earn it again. One produces peace, the other exhaustion. In leadership, that distinction matters. If you build a culture where worth depends on output, you'll crush creativity and burn people out. But if you lead with the humility of grace, acknowledging that all progress is shared and all success is stewardship, you create a space where excellence thrives without ego. Faith as trust, not transaction. The Greek word Paul uses for faith doesn't mean intellectual agreement. It means relational trust. It's leaning your full weight on someone's reliability. In other words, faith isn't proving yourself to God. It's trusting that He's already proven Himself to you. That's the shift most of us resist. We want control. We want to manage outcomes, reduce risk, and measure success by effort. But grace flips that script. It invites us to surrender control, not to give up, but to grow up. In business, that looks like leading from trust instead of fear. In relationships, it means choosing humility over defensiveness. In personal growth, it means embracing process over perfection. Trust is the soil where both grace and growth take root. Grace as a leadership strategy. Grace doesn't mean passivity. It means power under control. The same power that raised Christ from the dead, Ephesians 1:19-20, is at work in you, not to inflate ego, but to empower purpose. Professionally, grace creates leaders who lift rather than compete, who share credit rather than hoard it. When you understand that your influence is a gift, you lead with open hands, not clenched fists. That kind of leadership transforms organizations from performance factories into purpose-driven communities. Grace-driven leaders don't manipulate outcomes. They multiply others. The invitation to rest and responsibility. Here's the paradox. Grace calls us to rest, but it also calls us to responsibility. You can't earn grace, but once you receive it, it demands a response. Not repayment, but reflection. Every decision, every deal, every act of generosity becomes a mirror reflecting the mercy you've already experienced. You're not working for approval anymore, you're working from it. That shift changes everything. It frees you to take risks without fear of failure, to forgive without keeping score, to lead without performing. You stop striving to prove your worth and start living to reveal God's. Living evidence of grace. So what does this look like tomorrow morning when you walk into the office, sit down to lead a meeting, or make a tough call? It looks like remembering that you are living evidence of grace. Every breath, every breakthrough, every bit of progress is a whisper of God's generosity. And when you realize that, humility becomes strength. Gratitude becomes your edge. Integrity becomes your language. Grace doesn't make you soft. It makes you secure. You no longer need to boast because your identity isn't built on performance. You no longer need to fear because your future isn't dependent on perfection. You no longer need to compete because grace has already declared your worth. The final word. Here's the simplest truth with the deepest weight. You didn't earn this life, but you can honor it. Grace brought you here. Faith keeps you here. And your calling, whether you're leading a company, a team, or your family, is to live as a visible expression of invisible mercy. So take a breath, acknowledge the gift, and lead like someone who knows they didn't create their own oxygen. That's the kind of leader the world needs now.